Religious education. And today I'm going to tell you a story about Grandpa Chip and the invasives. And Grandpa Chip is actually my dad. And I just will say there's no Bernie meme in this story, even though it takes place in Vermont. So I grew up on an island in Lake Champlain, and the lake flows between Vermont and New York State. The island is more or less 10 miles from the Canadian border. The temperature there is more cold than hot, and the wind is almost always blowing. Just up the road from the house where I grew up is one of the highest points on the island, which isn't very high. This area used to be farmland, but before that, Native Americans probably stopped there to hunt and gather. Looking west, the meadow ends abruptly in a 75-foot cliff that drops to a rocky shore. The cliff's edge is rimmed with cedars, and these tree roots hold in the shale that hides trilobite fossils and layers of ancient inland sea sediments. The sky is huge, and the lake is never, ever one color. On the hill, there is now a small parking lot and a kiosk where my father, who I will call Grandpa Chip, helped to build this kiosk with other members of the town recreation committee. On the kiosk are informational signs that Grandpa Chip wrote and designed. The signs teach about the geology, the flora, the fauna, and how to tell time using a sundial, and much more. Years ago, a plant with yellow flowers began growing along the edge of Vermont roads and fields. The invasive is called the wild poison parsnip. It looks like a yellow Queen Anne's lace, and it is maybe more poisonous than poison ivy. When the meadow at the top of the cliff became a sea of yellow, the rec committee declared war on the parsnips. It was touch and go for a few years, but eventually with diligent mowing, the plants were taken out from the area. Once the parsnips were gone, Grandpa Chip and the committee realized their work was not done. Next, the group took on buckthorn, which is a nasty, brushy, tough-looking shrub. I don't have time to go into all the details, but this harmless-looking shrub wrecks the soil and can make animals sick. It took a town employee and a huge cutting machine several tries to get rid of the buckthorn. And then it took a crew of volunteers to take the cuttings away to be burned. So Grandpa Chip is a cynical man. He doesn't have much hope or faith that people will do the right thing. Since retirement, he has had a lot of time to read and listen to the news, and what he is reading and hearing isn't good news. Our planet is heating up, our seas are rising, and many people are in denial. It's easy to think the situation is hopeless and to feel helpless. So what does Grandpa Chip do with his anger? He concentrates on the 66 acres of land on an island in Lake Champlain near his backyard. And the meadow at the top of the cliff that I just told you about is 8 of the 66 acres, a small part of the nature reserve. Grandpa Chip's work is not done. He and the committee are now seeding wildflowers because when they took out the parsnips and the buckthorn, they inadvertently took out the wildflowers. Grandpa Chip says the milkweed is coming back on its own, but the wildflowers will need to be cultivated, at least at the beginning. The wildflowers will look beautiful, but more importantly, they are part of an ecosystem that includes, get ready, rabbits, mice, foxes, deer, butterflies, amphibians, reptiles, raccoons, fisher cats, and birds large and small, including eagles, hawks, owls, and Grandpa Chip's favorite birds, the ravens. And the ravens like to perch at the edge of the cliff and make a lot of noise. Like the wildflowers Grandpa Chip and the committee are planting, hope needs to be cultivated. Hope grows especially well when a group of people are involved and tending to it. I know some of you have participated in the Connecticut River cleanup. Perhaps when you finish your shift and you're covered in mud and hopefully not poison ivy, You feel like you accomplished something large, even if you only cleared garbage off a few feet of land. You might also feel hopeful, because surely if one person like yourself can clear up so much garbage in 2 hours, then lots of people can clean up the whole river, and lots and lots and lots of people can clean up the world. You probably know the saying, actions speak louder than words. Well, I think Grandpa Chip knows this saying firsthand. And maybe you have helped the earth and know this too. Hope gives us the energy we need to take action. Next time I talk to Grandpa Chip, I'll ask him what he thinks about this. But what do you think? Ask yourself, what changes do I hope for? Think hard. I bet you hope a lot of things will change. Take just one of those things that you hope for. You can start at the top of your list, or maybe you should start at the bottom of your list with something small and local. Maybe what you hope for is a change in your backyard, or maybe it is a change near your backyard. Let your hope grow to fill you from your head down to your toes. Are you set to go? I hope so, because now is the time to grow your hope and the time to act. So today in RE, we're going to be talking about hope. And we're going to be doing some silly things and some fun things, and we'll continue our conversation about race that we started last week, because hope and anti-racism go hand in hand. If you don't have the link to the RE Zoom, please chat up Leah and she'll send it to you. So at this time, we're going to sing out the children, and I'll see you in the Zoom room. Thank you.
Good morning. So this is Tom Perkins' song that you usually hear on the accordion, but we're going to sing it with the piano today. And the words are in the chat. Here we go. Though you leave our Zoom room, you do not leave our hearts. Though you leave this meeting, we're not far apart. Go meet with open minds, help out the best you can. See love in every heart until we meet again.
Morning, everybody. Our reading today is from Guiding Principles for a Free Faith by James Luther Adams. Finally, liberalism holds that the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. This view does not necessarily involve immediate optimism. In our century, we have seen the rebarbarism of mass man. We have witnessed a widespread disillusion of values, and we have viewed the appearance of great collective demonries. Progress is now seen not to take place through inheritance. Each generation must anew win insight into the ambiguous nature of human existence and must give new relevance to moral and spiritual values. A realistic appraisal of our foibles and a life of continuing humility and repentance is all that will do, for there are ever-present forces in us working for perversion and destruction.
There is something familiar in that bit of theology Karen just read. Liberalism holds that the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. This view does not necessarily involve immediate optimism. It sounds like that Martin Luther King Jr. quote on hope that we heard last week. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Adams was born 28 years before King, but they were certainly reading the same theology texts. Adams was responding to the crushing reality of the Second World War and the Holocaust. These are the collective traumas that he's responding to in his text. And King was working for civil rights for African Americans and also rights for poor people and an end to militarization. In both cases, Adams and King are talking about times when people need hope, when things seem hopeless. As you may have suspected, if you've followed the line through these last 5 months, hope is James Luther Adams' fifth smooth stone of liberal religion. Philosophers and theologians have debated whether hope is actually good for us in the long run. Nietzsche described hope as the prolonged torture in unbearable situations, telling us to keep going when things are bad. And Marx decried hope as something that delayed liberation, telling people to wait for the better thing coming. King and Adams alike insist that hope is necessary. The difference between these negative views of hope and the positive views, like King and Adams give us, is the difference in definition of hope itself. There's a hope that puts us to sleep, and there's the hope that gives us the energy to work for change. For Adams, the tension between justice and injustice is such a driving force in the human experience, in war, in oppression, in our own internal ethical struggles, and it's hope that keeps us aiming for the side of justice. It's hope that gives us something to steer towards as we make choices. Okay. Hope in theological terms has to do with teleology, working backwards from an ultimate event rather than understanding things as cause and effect in linear time. But my theory about hope is that there's something to this potential, this energy of non-material things. We look forward to a possible future, which gives us the energy to work for that future. It's not guaranteed that we get there, of course, but that borrowing of energy from the future may make the difference between getting there and not. And I think this is in line with what Adams meant when he said hope is necessary. We don't inherit progress. We have to keep working toward it. Human beings are only getting better as we commit ourselves to that future with more justice. It's not a given. These ideas about hope didn't go out of style in the 20th century either. Black movement activists are finding great strength to meet the moment now in reading fiction that reimagines the world. Fantasy, sci-fi, magical realism. Changemakers are looking to authors with wild imaginations, the ones who lean hard into their what if for inspiration on how we can reimagine the world we live in. It's not escapism so much as an imaginative workout. There are whole constellations of Black speculative fiction authors imagining a new way into unknown futures. The godmother of these writers and readers is Octavia Butler, who invented tales that say so much about our own world. In fact, Adrienne Marie Brown and Walida Imarisha published a book called Octavia's Brood, Science Fiction Stories from Social Justice Movements. Call it sci-fi, speculative fiction, visionary fiction. All of the stories in this book ask us to reimagine our own world while imagining with them in the worlds between the front and back cover. There are many stories in the book that lift me up with possibility, but one called Evidence by Alexis Pauline Gumbs describes what I know of hope. It takes the form of letters and journal entries and academic notes passed through time between an ancestor and descendant in different ages of their lives. And each of them knew that it was possible to achieve more and a more just and beautiful world because of the evidence of each other's lives. This is how hope works. It's an energetic relationship with time, with the future and the past. So what I'd like to do is to time travel with you today. This is an exercise that I learned from Adrienne Marie Brown, Autumn Brown, and Walida Imarisha. Take a breath. Close your eyes, if that's the way you like to imagine. We are going to a better time. We are leaving 2021 for the moment. And we're going to a time when people are free. Go as far as you need to go into the future to make that happen. Disabled people are free. Queer and trans people are free. Black people are free. Indigenous people are free. All people of color are free. People of all religions and no religion are free. No one suffers from poverty. The planet sustains all life, and all life is in balance with the planet. Tune in your senses to this new time. What do you see? What do you hear? What does the air smell like? What are the people doing around you? Who is there with you? What are you wearing? What does it feel like on your body? What does it feel like to be in this time and place? Someone behind you calls out your name. You turn around and greet them. How do they know you? Are they your descendant? Have they read history of you? They say, I knew I could make it because you made it. Gently, gently, come back to 2021. Take a breath. When you're ready, tune your senses to the place where you are. It's January 24th, 2021. How far did you go? How far have you come back? What feelings do you have in your body right now? That world is possible. What do we need to do to get from here to there? What's the first thing? Didn't it feel good to be that free? On Wednesday, at the inauguration, poet Amanda Gorman gave us these lines, along with so many others. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. It's true. Her poem captures this moment when we are still so hurt from the ongoing losses of the pandemic, the ongoing struggles for justice, and still she gives us this way forward. Change will come. Let's make it the change we hope for.